Let's start. Welcome, guys. This is session number 27 in the 365 UG India platform. Today, we will be talking about cost management in Dynamics 365 Finance, and we have our speaker, Bilur, joining us. Welcome, Bilur. Thanks for doing the session for us. Just quick agenda of what we will be doing in next 1 hour. I'll quickly introduce the group, and then we hand it over to Bilur for the session, and then I'll announce what's the next session coming up. Just few disclaimers before we move forward that all the views expressed in these sessions are from the speakers based on their experience. It does not represent view of their employers or Microsoft. And for these demo and sessions, we use Contoso demo data and the lab environments. We do not use any real customer environments. And any recommendations which come out of these sessions should be tested in the testing environment before applying to production environment. And this session is recorded on Teams and will be uploaded on our YouTube channel. So if you do not wish to be part of a recorded session, now is a good time to disconnect. Quick introduction of the group. We launched it around 1.5 years back. We are available on LinkedIn, Twitter, and various social media handles. The objective is to connect with the global dynamics community, learn and grow together. We have around 920 plus people in our LinkedIn group, and we have around 1900 followers of this group page. So thank you everyone for supporting the group. Keep supporting us, and we will continue on this journey. At the moment, it's driven by myself, Umesh, and Satya, and we also have Atul joining us soon in the volunteer groups. So we'll introduce him once he's able to join the session. A quick glimpse of the sessions in the past. So all the 26 sessions done before are uploaded on our YouTube channel. So you can see we started in July 21, and since then we have been trying to constantly do some sessions at a regular pace. And today we are doing session number 27. So all these sessions and recordings are available on our YouTube channel. Today we have Bilur from Turkey talking with us on cost management capabilities in Dynamics 365 Finance. So with that, I'll hand it over to Bilur. Bilur, welcome to our group. Over to you. The stage is all yours. Take it away.
Thank you so much. First, let me share my screen. Okay, please tell me when you can see.
Yes, we can see.
Yeah. Okay. First, I want to welcome everyone and thank you for inviting me for this session. So, agenda for today is the cost management module. Mostly, I want to go over the inquiries and reporting, but still, I would like to share a couple of information on how we need to set up the cost management module. Right. Let me introduce myself quickly. I have been an MCP since 2004, been in 40 plus projects and very passionate on Dynamics 365 FNO. I'm an MVP, I'm an MCT, and also a certified solution architect. So I know that you are not here to listen what I am or who I am. So let's start quickly because I want to give 10 or 15 minutes for your questions. Also, you can put them in the chat screen if you're able to. But if you are not, and if we do not have any time in the end to answer all the questions, we can discuss how we can manage that process. So why are we here today? We are here today to understand the concept of cost management for inventory and how to report and inquire into the inventory transactions. So before we start for the reporting, we need to understand the concept and what we have to set up. So what we have to set up is the first item model groups, storage dimensions, product dimensions, posting profiles, and module parameters. The item model groups are very critical and they are by company-specific setups. So even though your item is shared, you can use different item model groups accordingly. So here what we have to decide on the item model groups is either they are stocked, how we can manage the inventory model, and the other information are very critical on the item model groups. So decision making is, as I mentioned, very critical to track our costings. If you want to include the physical value, if it's a stock product or not. Because if it's not a stock product, then the inventory transactions may not occur on your transactions. And the inventory model, either if FIFO, LIFO, and etc., is very critical. To decide on the inventory model, actually it depends on how you want to report your costs. For example, you can manage your inventory, you can track your inventory with FIFO, but in the end, your costing model can be the weighted average. So this is very different. So when you check out, if you want to change anything in the end, I would offer to discuss this with your customers at the first time. So from these inventory models, moving average and standard cost is perpetual. So inventory clause, which I'm going to show you later, do not make adjustments and post the discrepancies to the designated accounts, right? So even though these standard cost and moving average do not create any corrections and adjustments, in the end, it's also advised to use the inventory clause procedure for that purpose. So let's go to our dynamics. Okay, let's see where we can find that information. In the modules, we go to the cost management. I may say cost accounting rather than cost management, but don't confuse yourselves, because cost accounting is another module. But while today we are talking about cost management, even though I say cost accounting, please consider as cost management. Okay, we have the setup in the inventory accounting. So in the inventory accounting, you can do the setups for your parameters. Here we have item model groups. Under the item model groups, as you can see, you can define more than one group depending to your needs. Some items can be stocked, some items may not be stocked, or different models may need to be managed on that purposes. So you can click new, write your model group and name, select your inventory policies, you can select your inventory model, and then decide which parameters that you need to select. If you want to include the physical value also in your costs, you can select the include physical value. You can post physical inventory, you can post financial inventory. It depends on how your legal accounting needs to see. For example, in Turkey, we do not select post physical inventory because legally we cannot post any transaction during creation of the product received or any other transactions that physically occur, but we post financial inventory. But in Europe, I know through my implementations, both of them are clicked. So it's very important to track your costs not rather than the end of the month, because end of the month is too late, because you need to see the values time to time, control them, report them to make decisions on the prices as well. So it's very important how your users want to see it and how you want to report it by selecting these information. And also recognition of cost part, we have post to deferred revenue, account on sales delivery, and accrue liability on product received parameters are very critical to be selected. Also, for the inventory policies, we have two, which are very important for the cost accounting. If we are going to decide on physical negative inventory, or while we are going to allow system to do the financial negative inventory. They are both two different things. Physical negative inventory, usually I do not use because it's rather hard to manage the physical negative inventory, but I know mostly in the retail business that physical negative inventory is very important. When you go to the stores, time to time there can be mistakes, and when they are integrated to the dynamics, they need to create the invoices for the users, for the customers. So you may make physical negative inventory applicable time to time, but in the end, when you do the counting, you should consider and correct those values accordingly. And financial negative inventory, time to time, your GL accounts may need to be negative, depending on different various reasons. So if you allow financial negative inventory, this is very critical to select this parameter as well. For not to stop system, financial negative inventory can be clicked as yes. So in the end, when you run the closing, system will correct and adjust the values. So we have also storage and tracking dimensions. On storage and tracking dimensions, also the financial inventory needs to be clicked for the items that we need to track the values on. Here, let's go. Here we have storage dimension groups. Storage dimension groups are where the physical inventory is in. We have 5 of them: site, warehouse, location, inventory, and license plate. Sorry, let me check the name. The inventory status and the license plate. So even if you have more than one active dimension, you do not need to track costs on all of these dimensions, even though you are able to track them physically. So for example, in this example, site and warehouse dimensions are active, but the cost is only being tracked on the site dimension. This is also the same for tracking dimensions. On the tracking dimension groups, these are the groups that you want to track your transactions for, rather than you stored, but these are for the tracking part. So here, as we have mentioned before, if you want to track cost according to your tracking dimensions, you need to click on the financial inventory checkbox. Here we have tree, batch number, serial number, and the owner dimensions. But when we click nothing, it will just track those costs without separating according to our tracking dimensions. If we want to, for example, track costs by batch number, then we can click on the financial inventory. This is very critical because that all the costing, how they are going to be marked, how they are being settled, depends on these parameters. And we have posting profiles, of course. While I'm mostly on finance, this is very important parameter to be selected. The posting profiles, there are lots of posting profiles in the system for the items and also for the routes, right? Because, for example, from manufacturing perspective, we are not just creating item kind of transactions, but both the routes, etc., for assembly, for example, for cutting or any other operations that you are used. So in this case, you have to do the setup correctly in the first time before creating the transactions, because it's really not hard to change them after the transactions occur. Then you have to create to make the 0 value for the item, and then you need to change the posting profiles, or else there will be a difference between the GL and the inventory reporting part. And we have module parameters. On the module parameters, it's very important. There are a couple of important parameters that we need to check. Let's go to the module parameters. Here we select post-product receipt in ledger and post-packing slip in ledger. Even though you have selected the generic parameter as yes on the inventory model that you want to post the physical transactions, you have to click one by one on the parameters which physical transactions that you want to post to general ledger. And these are post-product receipt in ledger and post-packing slip in the ledger. If you do not select these parameters, then in this case, posting will not occur. So as I mentioned, the question of when. So when we have to do cost accounting, we have to first do the setups before transactions. This is very critical and this should be done very wisely, or else you may have some differences between the GL and the inventory module, and you will have some difficulties during making your reconciliations when you are going to check from the trial balance. You can use the system reports. I will show some reconciliation system reports, but still you have to do your setup before transactions. If you want to change any parameter, there should not be any balances, at least on the items, and some of them may not be able to change time to time. And we have to control the reports periodically, preferably daily. Why I say preferably daily is that when it comes to the cost management, when we try to do the cost accounting in the end of the month, it may be too late or time-consuming issue, right, to correct all the data that is coming from all the month. If you are doing it monthly in a month end, or if it's 3 months, it would be a catastrophe. So all the operational reports should be preferably controlled daily, like what did I produce, how much did I consume, or how much expense do I have, like checking the trial balance, or just controlling the manufacturing reports, or just checking the sales order reports or purchase order reports, and etc. Or else when you come in the end point, it will be rather hard to correct that all months data backwards. And also the close inventory periodically, which I'm going to show you how we are going to close the inventory. It can be monthly, quarterly, in 6 months, but it's advised at least you have to close your inventory yearly. So this is very critical as well. So let's go a bit talk about the inventory closing. Inventory closing form is not actually inventory closing, but it's saying closing and adjustment. Let's go to our lovely 365. Sorry, I very like my program. So I go to cost management, inventory accounting, and closing and adjustment form. Here, as you can see, we have our close procedures for closing. When I click on the close procedure, you will be able to see 2 reports. One is the check open quantities and check cost prices. These 2 reports are very valuable reports that we have to do before we close the inventory. Check open quantities report is being used for if there is anything that we need to consider before we close our inventory. So if there's any open quantities that we have to go to the operations and tell them to finalize their transactions. Check cost prices report is also a good report. On the check cost prices report, you will be able to define your deviations with maximum deviation and minimum deviation. And if you want to, if you can ignore the production orders, and when you say OK, system will show you if there are any deviations that you need to check on. So in this case, is if you have any deviations that you need to control and check and go and correct, you can inform users to do their work. Here, as you can see, we have the item number, the financial date, the reference of this difference, the number, the load ID, price, unit, and the received price. You can also see configuration size and color information as well. But in this case, before you run the close, if this deviation is critical in your mind, then you have to go and correct this value. Then you can close your inventory by clicking on the close inventory. So when you close the inventory, system will make all the corrections in the system, all the adjustments in the system for that cost to be accurate, right? Depending on your model, of course, and the parameters that you have selected. So you can close your inventory up to, you can enter here a date, or you can select a period code if you have any period code definition done in the system. Specification can be total, group, and etc. But system will close all the inventory transactions. So you cannot say that I'm going to close this transaction for this group and etc. And there are parameters which is done for performance issues. You can select maximum number of iterations allowed per item, because cost closing is running again and again in itself till system thinks that it's okay and says that it calculated the correct value for that item. So when we write here 100, system will run the iteration 100 times, but system do not need to run it 100 times, may finalize that item calculation in the 5th or 6th iteration or 1st iteration as well. So this is the maximum iteration that we want system to run. So when it's finished, but if it cannot finish in its iteration in 100, then system will stop the iteration. Minimum amount allowed. This means that, as I mentioned, system will go and check our inventory transactions in iterational basis, and time to time there can be an amount still needs to be considered on the transaction. For performance issues, we can say here, for example, 1. So the other value, the remaining value that on the inventory will be expensed in the end when system stop the calculation. For example, you can change it in here. In Turkey, for example, it's 0.01 for legal purposes. So it depends on how you want to use it and change it. I think system did allow 0.10. But this depends on how you want to expense your remaining balance. And we have run calculation after closing. So when you want to run inventory calculation after the closing, you can set this to yes, and system will recalculate the rerun the recalculation after closing as of today, right? But what I do is that I never ever run the closing in the first time. I always run the recalculation. Recalculation do make the same effect as closing, but it doesn't close your inventory transactions. And you can just run for one item or an item group to check your balances. So here you can recalculate your inventory, you can select your parameters, etc., and say OK. So system will calculate your costs and show them to you, and you can report it. It's also very important, I think, that you can periodically run this functionality. In one of my implementations, it was running daily basis. So when we run it in daily basis, in each day, approximately, of course, we know the balance, the amount, and we can see that information in our GL transactions for the adjustments as well. So you can run your recalculate inventory again and again for that month. For example, you run your recalculation and then do your corrections, have your reports, and then rerun again. So when everything is fine, you can close your inventory. If you recalculate the inventory, if all the adjustments is done and posted to GL transactions, when you run the close, there will be no transactions, of course. But of course, you have to be careful before you recalculate the inventory, because it will create more transactions time to time. So what I would advise is that be sure that all the transactions are in with checking the reports and say recalculate. Once you run it, you can of course reverse it. And during the calculation, if you want to see the calculation list, where the system is and which iteration, you can see in the calculation list. If you want to pause your calculation, you can pause your calculation and then resume the calculation. If there is an error message in the system during your calculations or closures, and if you correct it, you can resume your calculations as well. Here, also, we will be able to see from the details which settlements has been done, what has been corrected, which amounts arise, and the voucher of this transaction. And then here from active, you will see only the active ones, which you have reversed. If you want to see, you can see it from the all. Also, we have this adjustment functionality, which I very much use. You can adjust the values for your on-hand transactions or in transactional basis. For example, in the end, or let me not say in the end, but in a period, you decide to change the values on your hand. You can just select your items and change the cost prices of your on-hand values. Or you can adjust the transactions as well. For example, let's go to transactions, and then you select. Okay, here as you can see, the receipt status is purchased, because the corrections can be made only from the issue. For the issues, the receipts will automatically updated by the system, and you can give criteria like item number, the financial date, and etc. if you have any specific. For example, I use this functionality in the end. In Turkey, we do not use root costs for different reasons. So in the end, we allocate the costs to the productions by selecting the reference as production to our items, produced items, right? Or for example, if you have an import and you forget to post in transaction on the purchase or invoice, you can adjust it from here. Actually, I would have used some other functionalities, of course, but also this place can be used by managing correct transactions. So we will have the list of the inventory transactions according to our criteria, and here you can edit, and from the edit now you can fill the amount that you want to update, and when you post it, this adjustment will be created directly to the transactions. So here you will see the posted quantity, posted value. If there is any other adjustments have been made after posting a transaction, you will also be seeing here in the adjustment field, and you will edit again in the edit now field the amount. For example, in this example, there's a reference of counting. Assume that you forgot to post the cost amounts in the counting journal, and it's posted. So you can, either you have to do correction and then do another counting, but it's easier to manage the amounts from here if you forget to post any costs on the counting journals as well, right? Or you do not edit them one by one manually, and you have a value and you want to allocate that information. You can use item cost price, fixed cost price, amount, value, or percent functionalities. If you have an amount, for example, you go to amount and you want to allocate 100,000 amount to all the values to the inventory transactions, you will select the allocation principle if you want to allocate according to the value or quantity. So if you select, for example, quantity, system will check the quantities and then allocate automatically for each line, right? As you can see, in the total amount has been allocated for each line. I use this functionality in cement industry, for example, because in cement, the roots are the same. It's always one when you look at the labor costs, one-to-one. So I was allocating the labor cost to the production orders according to the quantity with a certain labor cost amount when we look at the trial balance. So when you close your inventory, system will do the corrections.
Sorry, below there is a question on adjustment.
Okay.
How, when you make adjustment in the closing and adjustment form, where and how do you document and justify those adjustments so that auditors understand the adjustment that is made? Like, is any audit log we can record something when we make the adjustment?
Actually, it's auto posting, so I don't think there is a comment that you can make on that one. You can do for the closing procedures. You can.
The project there is dimension value.
Sorry, I can hear from a lot of mics. Guys, if you're not speaking, please be on mute. Um, Below, you want to take it now or do you want to wait for Q&A?
Let's talk in the Q&A, okay?
Yeah.
So let's do that way.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. So, as I mentioned, before the inventory closing, we have to run check open quantities report and check cost prices report, so we know what is missing in transactional basis and inform the operations. We can run recalculation. We can even run it daily for our cost to be more accurate, but it depends on the company. You can adjust values, you can adjust on hand or transactions, and you can see the settlements from the system. What we need to be careful of is that ended production orders cannot be opened. So when you end a production order, there is no return. So it should be done wisely. It has some good and in bad. What is bad is that users can do mistakes, and it's a little bit harder to correct those transactions. What is good is that it makes users more careful. In one of my implementations, my production entry user was a little bit an average user, but he was the best in the system perspective, and I asked why, and he said that reversing a transaction is not easy as it is, so I have to be more careful on. So it has, as I mentioned, a good thing as well. So only value open transactions are considered. This is also a very important functionality because it affects the performance. Only value open transactions are considered once system thinks that there's nothing else to do, as we seen that the other value is expensed time to time. System will not check those transactions as well. And financial date is used for costing. Even though we have physical date and the financial date, the costing is done on the financial date. Physical date is also important, but all physical date should have a financial date to be considered in the costing. So what I do is that I will show you later in the inquiries and go into inventory transactions and check that all the physical dates have their own financial date for the period that I want to run costing. So you cannot change parameters once the transactions are created. It's not cannot, but it sometimes cannot and sometimes should not. So you should consider all the parameters to be set up before you start entering transactions. To be able to change parameters, inventory value needs to be 0 in quantity and amount. So this is a very important thing to be considered. Also, for cost management, marking is important for correct costs, for, of course, the periodic type of costs. And system does that automatically, for example, from intercompany, SO or PO, dropship SO and PO, master planning, production order to SO, sales order, credit notes, and direct delivery transactions. Still, if you need to do any marking, for example, you are not going to use the credit note but want to create a transaction with a negative value, in this case, you can do the marking. Marking is done received with issue and matched by inventory dimensions. When you try to mark it, system will show you on which transactions that you can mark for, and then the inventory dimensions should match as well. Moving average and standard cost do not use marking, and if marked after posting, closing, and adjustment, system will correct the value. So if you forget to mark that transactions during the posting, before posting, it's okay. So you can check and you can mark it again, and when you run the closing and adjustment, system will correct that value as well. It's also very critical for cost accounting, cost management, is to use standard cost on items. I'm not talking about the inventory model of standard cost to give a cost on the item. You can either go into the your item and select fill your cost price, or you can go to item prices and set a cost price per site. If you put it on the item, it will be per item, but on the item prices, you can define this information per site if it differs per site. Why we need to, this is not a must, but this is good to have, because when you post your transactions, the values can be 0, depending that system will not make any cost in the system. So at least you will have something by default when you post your transactions, and you will have your reports more accurate. For example, you have a purchase order and you don't have a price on it, and you have received it, and then you create a sales order and post a sales order and create the invoice. In this case, while there's no cost on that purchase order, and when you sell it, there will be no value as cost of goods sold. But if you have a cost price, at least on the item or in item prices, you will have cost of goods sold posted at least. Then, as I mentioned, it will be corrected in the end by calculation of the closing and adjustment. Also, it's very critical to control that issue transactions have correct values. The most of the thing that I have faced before is that, for example, counting journals may not have values on it. So you have to go and correct that information so that the costs are very correct in the end. So when we come to the end, we can say that cost is only a result. So if you or users do make the setups correctly, and if the data is accurate in the system, when you run the calculation, the correct values will occur. And to maximize your profits, I don't think that we should wait in the end of the month or 3 months or wherever you want to check your month. Monitoring is very critical, and this should be done as an operational basis, daily, weekly, or whenever it's need to. And this should be in your agenda, right? And reporting is also very critical. For reporting purposes, it's too late when you come to the end, because costs and cost reporting is very important for your profits. You have to know what your cost is to decide on the prices. If you are doing it in the month end, you may think that you have been selling all those items without profit or with loss. So in the end, after checking the reportings, decision making is depending to us. You can have all these reports in the system, but decision making is on humans still. Let's see what AI will take us, you know. But decision making is also very important, because when I go to the companies, they decide, even they are making loss for that item, they might decide in different perspective to still produce that item or purchase and sell that item as well. So how we are going to do the reporting? We have inventory postings in the cost management. Here, inquiries and reports, inventory accounting inquiries and postings. All the postings, either physically or financially, are recorded under this form. When we select one, we will be able to see the ledger accounts with the posting types and the financial dimensions selected on the transaction. Okay, unfortunately, in this version, I don't know if it's applicable in the other versions, but we cannot take the ledger accounts in here. But still, we can see by checking the lot ID, item number, or a voucher, if you have the voucher number, the ledger accounts that has been used to post these transactions. Also, another report is the transactions. This is the most common queries that are built upon. Here you will see all of your inventory transactions. This is the same form actually when you go per item, but it's I think easier to manage because you can see everything from the cost accounting, cost management perspective. You will see the item number, warehouse, location, site, quantity, physical cost, and financial cost, and the other information. And you will be able to see the value open yes or value open no, which will not be, again, in the concept of the cost accounting. Also, you will be able to insert the columns that you need to see. For example, I muchly use the references. And I say OK. Here, I can see the references as well. Inventory transactions. Also, we can see the Cost Explorer. Here, when you go to the ledger, inventory, Cost Explorer, you will be able to see how this cost has been calculated from. Let's find out a production order. Let's filter. Okay, let's go to inventory. Let's go to Cost Explorer. As you can see in a tree view, you will be able to see how this cost has been managed. In the format, you will be able to see all the fields like item number, financial dimension, name, reference number, quantity, unit price, and cost amount. And this production has a root consumption and 3 production lines, and the total of the amounts will be the same as the total amount of this transaction. Also, if there is any settlements, you can go to the settlements tab and see the settlements corrections in here as well. We also have trace inventory functionality. Here, by tracing the same transaction, we will able to see how these values are being generated from. As you can see, by default, the cost amount is not here. We only have item number, physical date, reference number, quantity, and inventory dimensions. But when we go to the display options, we can select cost value and the product name and say OK. And as you can see, you will also be able to see and track how this cost can be tracked directly by using the trace inventory dimensions. This can be done by transactional basis. There's no report that shows us the old tracing values, but still it counts because it helped me too much in my previous implementations. We have standard cost transactions. On standard cost transactions, if you are using the standard cost, you are able to see the revaluations and the cost transactions that are being used for standard costing. Also, we can use view calculation details. I'm trying to find where it is. Okay, let me find out and inform you. But in here, by view calculation details, you will be able to see how that production order amount is the cost amount being managed from. Here, as you can see, it's a production order. There are 3 items, 3 processes, 1 output unit-based machine depreciation, and there is a surcharge for internal logistics, and there is rate for indirect labor costs, which will create the price. And also, when you go for the price calculation on overview estimation, there is a costing sheet tab. And in the costing sheet tab, you will be able to see these all information in a tree view. And this tree view is something that you can generate for yourself. It's like a report that you build it for yourself, right? So you can have different costing sheets according to your needs. So here, you can set up your costing sheets. First, there is cost of purchase and then materials, and you put down the material detail. And then you have overheads, you have cost of conversions, you have surcharges, labor overheads, and etc. in here as well. So this is also, for example, if you are looking for in the perspective of a manufacturing user, they will be able to see this information directly and to understand rather than checking from the ledger perspective or other perspectives. So this is also a common used report in the system. We also have cost estimates and costing report. This is also a very important report that we can use. Here, you can see by production order, shows you what is estimated and what it really is. Because time to time when you post a production order, you may need to add some materials, not into the BOM, bill of materials, but rather than to the production order directly. So you will be seeing the consumption amounts as estimation, total cost amount, cost price per unit, and the real costings in this report. You can also do variance analysis, see the variances. The variance will show you whether it's a variance or from direct materials, direct manufacturing, or the indirect costs. And we have inventory value report storage. This is one of the reports that I mainly use and like, because you can change the design, reconcile with GL, and you can add the range. In the inventory value report storage, as you can see, you will be able to see the materials, labor, indirect costs one by one. And the report storage is the same actually, but it's in a grid view. This was made, as far as I know, for the performance issues, because when you try to take loss of transactions into the report, there was sometimes issue in the performance. Let's go how we can do the reports. Here we have inventory value report storage. You select new. You fill the identifier, select the identification, which I will show you how you manage the identification. And then when you go to view details, you will be able to see, according to your identification, which fields, which data you need to see. This is all the same, as I mentioned, as the report of the inventory value. You select the ID and you can give date interval code or from date and to date. So when we go to identification, you can have more than one identification. Here it's named as 10, 20, 30, 40, but you can have various of them and then name as you want to. Here, if you want to select the inventory, if you want to see just the inventory or work in progress transactions, deferred cost of goods sold, profit or loss, or if you want to see the average unit cost, you can select calculate average unit cost field in here. If you want to, in the end of the report, print the total quantity and value, you can select this parameter to be able to see that information. Also, you can reconcile with GL. So you can select the inventory account, VIP account, deferred cost of goods sold, and cost of goods sold accounts to compare with your information. You can select your inventory dimensions, view or total, have a total per them. Resource ID is a little bit named differently, but this means that item ID. So if you want to see the item ID, say yes. And if you want to see the total per item ID, you can say total as yes. Resource group is item group. So if you want to view, say yes. And then if you want to see the item total by item group, you can say yes to that as well. You can include the transactions that are not yet been posted to ledger. So you can set yes here to be able to see the inventory transactions that are not posted to ledger. Also, if you want to see the rows with resource types like material, labor, indirect costs, direct outsourcing, you can just click on these parameters to be able to see them as rows. If you want to see only the totals per line, you can see the totals, but if you want to see the detailed transactions, how that cost has been calculated, you can see the transactions. But when you select the transactions, it may take some time if there are hundreds or thousands of transactions in your report. And you can include the beginning balance for this report as well. So when you run the report, you will have that information in your either invent value report or invent value storage. Also, you can see the potential conflicts in the report between the GL. When you go to here, under inventory accounting status reports, potential conflicts, inventory and ledger. When you say OK, you can select exclude physical to ledger or exclude physical, exclude blank dimensions. You can give criteria and say OK. You will have in which item, in the first you will see the balance differences from inventory, how much it is, and in general how much it is. As you can see, there's a very big difference. This can be because of different variation of transactions, like posting manually to general ledger rather than selecting an item. Then you will have the list why there is a difference. This difference comment is very critical that you need to consider too. So as supportive docs, I've used Tech Talk series. I put there the link, and of course Microsoft Learn. So you can use both. In the Tech Talk series, I think there are 8 Tech Talk series for the cost management, which does also explain how the FIFO is working, LIFO is working, moving average is working, detailed with the schemas. So it's good that you listen that service as well. So thank you so much. I think we do not have too much time for question and answers, but if you have any, I'm glad that I can reply, or you can reach out to me in the later stages. So I'm leaving to you, Rachid.
Thank you, Bilur. This is a very wide topic, so we do appreciate the level of breadth you have covered. It's not possible to cover everything in 1 hour, so really appreciate the details you have shared. Would you like to take 1 or 2 questions? We can go like bottom up, or otherwise we have the list of questions and we can respond back to people and share it with you, and then we can reply later on. Yeah.
Of course, let's do later if you would like to.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, no, I understand we are just on time. So guys, apologies, we won't be able to do much of a Q&A here, but we have got your questions. So if you can also pop in your email address, we will discuss them with Bilur and with the other experts, and we can try to have a consolidated review. Also, I have shared the link of our user group, which is now available on Microsoft Dynamics community user groups page. So feel free to post your questions there also, and we can initiate our discussion. So thanks a lot, Bilur, for sharing your knowledge with us. I'll just quickly take 1 more minute to share what's coming next. Um, before I let everyone go. So, guys, next session in our group is getting planned on. Just a minute, where is my presentation mode? Here it is. Yeah, so upcoming session is on using Azure Logic Apps to do integrations with Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations, which will be delivered by Anita. She is based in UK and she will be joining us to give this session and share her knowledge and experience in this space. So we will be posting out the session announcement soon. So do keep an eye on our channel and register and subscribe and join us in the upcoming session. So once again, thanks a lot, Bilur. Any final closing remarks from anyone? Feel free to unmute and um, unmute yourself and say it. But really appreciate you joining us.
Thanks, Bilur. I just want to add that this is really a complicated issue, and there are a lot of variety of issues or the scenario comes up when you work with different kind of costing model. And so it's not just one way of configuring the system or one way of working in this module, right? They can be handled different ways. So I appreciate your knowledge and your session today.
Uh, and I would like to add, if you are setting up a cost management module, first do it in test environment, right? So it's very important to do the setup and maybe parallel running a month to see that everything is okay. And in operational basis, it's very critical, you know, because as I mentioned, the cost management is the end. You can close the inventory and check the results and make your decisions, but the operations should be controlled wisely, and they should know and understand that it's not the cost accounting manager that do the costing, it's the users. So they should
That's
do
right.
your
Yeah,
cost profile as well.
absolutely. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank
A lot
you.
of appreciations coming in the chat window, Bilur. So thank you from Serdar, Vaibhav, Balaji, Ashok. Yeah, a lot of appreciations from Ajay. So
Thank you,
uh,
everyone. And
yeah,
also we have visitors from England as well. Hello, Chala. All over the world.
Hello, hello.
Hello. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for a great presentation. I'm sure we'll be in touch with you.
Thank you. See you.
Yeah, it was a
amazing.
great session.
Thank you, guys. Anyone else wants to unmute or say something before we close the call? A lot of appreciations coming below in the chat window. Thank you, Vidyadharan, Ashwini, Jay, Dharmendra, Shashidhar, Imran, Vinay, Vijay. Yeah, a lot of appreciations, a lot of kudos to you. Thanks for doing that for us. Really
Very
appreciate
good,
it.
very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Have a good day, guys. Yeah.
Have a nice day.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
Have a
you.
nice day.
Thank you for the
Bye.
guys.
Thanks. Bye bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
Lord. Thank you.
Thank you.